Welcome to Real Marriage.
Today on our show we have our guest Dom and Brian. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're glad to have you. So you two decided to do coaching with us, and we want our guests to know a little bit more about coaching and your experience with it. So first of all, I want to know, why did you guys seek us out for coaching, and how did you even find us and know that you should come to us?
I think that we both realized and we both knew that we love each other and we want to be with one another, but we also knew that there were some serious flaws within our relationships, and we wanted to strengthen our foundation, to be able to grow together, to improve ourselves as people and humans, but as well as a married couple, and pay that forward to our children. We had talked multiple times about things that upset us or frustrate us or how we could do better. We just didn't have the tools. We just didn't know how to execute. We knew where we wanted to go. Yeah. We knew where we were. We just didn't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And so I actually saw advertisement for your book on a local Facebook page. And I thought, wow, says Amazon bestseller, they must be doing something right. So I said, yes, please. And I got the download, but didn't really do anything with it because I didn't know where we were going, and we hadn't really talked about it, and feel like we both needed to be in that space where we come. And finally we did. We talked about it. I mentioned to Brian, he said, if you think these people could help us, let's do it. You will never know unless we try.
Right. That's what I like. That if you just tried it.
Yep.
I always say, what do you have to lose? Just give it a shot. And,
Yep.
and it just...
Yeah, no, I kind of echo what Dominic said. I think the big thing for us is our life situation and kind of how things had evolved over the last coming years with myself being in training for 9-10 years, getting married within that time period, and then what started as a close marriage, seeing ourselves kind of being drawn further and further and further apart, and probably realizing within the last year or two that if we didn't pull each other back to each other, we were going to be leading a life that neither of us was going to be happy with. And so Dom had been reaching out to me for probably the last 2 years or so, saying, look, we need to see someone, we need to get this back on track. And I was the one who was hesitant about it. And then finally about a year ago, Dom came to me with the proposal to come and see you guys, and it took a lot of convincing. It took a lot of thought, but eventually we realized that this had to be done, and the answer was yes, and kind of everything else is written from there. So
Yeah, I agree, Brian. It sometimes takes time for a man to warm up to that idea. If you're in that situation where you're nervous about coaching because you don't want all your problems out there, or you feel that you just can't talk to anybody, we always say that we're not here to condemn you. We're not here to point fingers. We're here just to help, and that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I think you guys felt that when you came in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now you spoke of your busy schedules and how life itself can pull you apart. Since you've been coming here, what have you done differently, and how do you feel that with your life busy schedule, because that's still busy, what's different? What have you done differently to manage that?
At least for me, I think I've shifted my focus, right? My focus for the past 10 years has been, by necessity, I think, focused pretty much, 80% on my career, on my job, trying to get to where I wanted to be. And what I think I've realized over the past handful of months is that, look, that's not my priority. And so what Dominic and I have done is really looked at our schedules and reworked our schedules, not only to simplify our lives outside of our family such that we can spend more time together, but actually making that a priority. And so the time that I'm not dedicated towards my work, the time that Dom's not dedicated towards her work, that time is dedicated 100% towards us. And as simplistic as that may sound, I mean, you guys saw our schedules initially. Dom's schedule book is a total mess. There's one thing after another, and one thing after another, one thing after another, and all of a sudden you realize that when you pack in your schedule so heavily, where's the time for us?
Right.
And so it really was a conscious effort on our part to make sure that we worked in that time really such that we can have that time to reconnect. Because we quickly realized that the only way that our marriage is going to get to the point where we want it to be is if we reconnect with each other and kind of rekindle that relationship that we initially had.
Yeah, it's real easy to let life take over, and before you know it, you're just two strangers in the same house. Would slow down, and Sundays the whole town would be shut down. Now it's just as alive as Friday. So you have to control it, because if you don't, nobody else will, and the world will let you it'll overtake you.
Right.
And so we're glad to see you guys. You know, a lot of the problems that people have is perspective, and they don't realize what's happening. You know, everything's so urgent and necessary, but you sometimes think that, well, it's my husband or my wife, they'll always be there. You know, we're committed to each other, but at some point people get tired and they want, you got married to have a relationship. So it's important to realize that's the most important relationship that you have. So in our coaching sessions, we talk a lot about unity. It's our favorite word, because that's what we're thriving for with all of the couples and ourselves. So some of the things that you guys have done as a result of coaching that maybe you didn't do before, can you think of an example?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is being very purposeful with our time together. So unifying in the moment as a couple. So not just sitting on the couch watching a TV program, or you're spending time together, but you're doing this chore and I'm doing that chore. That's not spending time together. It's just being in each other's presence. So really being mindful of the time that we spend together, how we spend that time together, and communicating with one another probably better than we, I think, have in the past. It's more listening and hearing than just talking at, which I think is a huge tool.
Yeah, I think actually that's a really good point. I think one example that I can think of is one thing that we've kind of grown to like to do is we'll go to Topgolf and hit some golf balls together, just as kind of a nice healthy exercise to do together. And one of the observations that Dom had made when we did that last time is we were there and we were supporting each other, and someone would have like a good hit and it was like, oh, you know, great shot, or, you know, really lifting each other up and supporting each other.
Right.
And at least for me, that was probably the first time in a long time that we had that kind of a moment where we really felt like we were kind of, instead of, you know, pushing each other down, actually
building each other up,
uplifting each other. And for us, that's a much better use of our time than, you know, filling in our downtime by sitting on the couch and watching TV. One other thing that we've used to kind of unify each other is prayer. You know, that's something in all honesty for me that is a fairly distant thing for me. It's something that I hadn't really done a whole lot of. It just wasn't in my makeup, in my DNA, and I can credit you guys to kind of, you know, bringing that back to my attention and saying, look, why don't we give it a try? I think that will bring you peace, and I think that will, you know, help unify us. And I think that the first time that I realized this was actually going to work, I was at work. It was the start of a really busy stretch of shifts, and work for me is a big source of stress. And I got a call from Dom, and the kids were in the background. We were on speakerphone, and she said, "Look, why don't we all just take a moment and just say a prayer?" And she prayed for me and for for my day, to kind of bring me peace as I care for my patients. But then also, a prayer that kind of incorporated all of us. And really, in all honesty, for me, that kind of felt like, even though I was away from my family and away from them and I was at work, it kind of felt like we were all together at that moment.
Yeah.
And it definitely brought me a feeling of peace throughout the rest of the day, and really kind of, I think, set up for success for the rest of the day, and kind of having us be on the same page.
That's so good.
It's been very helpful.
So good.
Yeah, whether she goes to work before I, am off, or if I'm downstairs praying by myself, I'll always call her and just say, "Hey, we need to pray," and pray over you, and she prays over me, and it's just, we never leave the house without praying together, and that's what we love to do, because we know God answers prayer. He really does.
He does.
He really does.
Yeah. And, it's caused us to call on something bigger than us, because, if you think you can do this world by yourself, you are dead wrong. So when we call on the Lord, we are asking Him to give us His wisdom throughout our day. And I could just feel His prayers covering me and from keeping me from making mistakes and things like that. But, we just trust Him, because in order to be unified, we have to do it His way, because marriage is God's institution. And if God created it, then we have to expect for Him to be able to give us the answers on how to do this. That's why we pray before every session and close with prayer, because for marriages to be successful and to do it His way, which He guarantees will be successful if we do it His way.
And I remember one time we were praying that morning, and I always pray for protection over Ange and over our boys and everything. And I guess she was out driving the highways.
I had been up all night with a toothache.
Yeah.
And so I went to the dentist, and on my way from the dentist, I fell asleep at the well on 71. And he had prayed for me to get out there safely, and I hit that. I just dropped. I don't even remember what happened. I was just gone, and all of a sudden I just heard boom, 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 in the car. And I when I opened my eyes, the car was just going back and forth. I'm trying to get control, and every car had been peeled back from me. And 71, it's a busy highway. Every car had peeled back. And when I got home, I was terrified to look at my car, because I just knew that it was just really in bad shape. And I pulled into the garage, and I got out, and do you realize that there was nothing scratched on my car? My wheels hit the concrete wall, and then it had a little slat,
Wow.
And my wheels, both wheels, were up on that ledge of the concrete wall, and not one scratch was on that car. So I know that God does answer prayer, and so we've seen miracle after miracle, because we pray and trust Him. So we're just going to encourage you to keep doing it. Don't quit, and no matter what trouble you have, that's where the biggest piece of unity that we want you to get, if nothing else. We got to go back to God when you can't figure out a problem, and start praying about the issues that you still have, because coming to coaching gets you to look at things properly. But it doesn't guarantee that that's all you need to do, and then, okay, we did coaching and now that's that. You have to learn the tools, get the proper perspective, and then keep implementing it. And if you can do that and keep praying about it along the way, you'll be successful. You'll be successful.
And don't stop if everything's going well.
Right.
Because that's what everybody always does. Everything starts going well, and then they quit doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, stop.
So Dom, since you guys started coaching, have you noticed any change in your roles?
I think the biggest change for me was, as Brian spoke to, with his training and being away from the family through that period of time, I fell into the role, or felt like I was in the role that I was in charge of everything. I wanted to support Brian in his training and being successful. Didn't want him to have any stressors at home because he was already stressed so much at work. So, and then in the meantime, we had kids, and then I'm responsible for that too, and I'm earning the money, and I'm working, and it became almost like I was the head of the household. I had all the control, but then I was upset with him that he wasn't acting like the father figure, the head of the household, the person that I wanted him to be, maybe comparing him to other people in my life, and those expectations. But it's become clear to me through this coaching that we've received that I never gave him the opportunity to step into that role because it was already filled. We can't have two, right? So just realizing that this is just a different time of our lives. In that moment, yes, I had to do that. I had to take control. We had to keep this ship right. But now I need to vacate that position to allow him to step into the position. So as much as I was frustrated or angry or annoyed, it was me. I wasn't allowing it. And since I've stepped back, and it's not easy. This is 10 years of work, 10 years in that role. It's very difficult to then suddenly step back and just
relinquish.
Exactly. Well, that's not how I do it, or that's not how we do it. But who are we? Right? Has, I think, changed the dynamic in the household.
Yeah, that's awesome. When husband and wives are not in their proper place in their roles, that brings chaos to the whole house.
That's right.
And there's a ripple effect, So as you guys started to see your roles, and I think when you have a busy person like him being a physician, he's out of the house so much. When he comes back, it's hard for you guys to shift those roles. So that's what we talk a lot about, being in unity with each other. So supporting each other. You can't just say, well, this is dad's role and this is only what dad can do because dad's not home. Dad's at work. So however, we talk a lot about supporting each other, having each other's back, being that unified front. Because especially when you have children in the house, if they know that they can push your buttons or push your buttons, then that's what they're going to do. So when you guys become unified in your roles, and to say, okay, when daddy's gone, the two of you have agreed that this is how the house is going to be run. This is how discipline is going to be handled, so that when you do come back and step in your role, it's no surprise to the kids. They're used to that because it's the model that you guys set in place. So now that you guys are doing that, before we heard a lot of, these are my kids. And so now things are looking differently, that you guys know these are your kids, and you guys are unified in that.
At times it kind of felt like a foreign country, right? I mean, you're at work for so many hours, and all of a sudden you come back, and I'm trying to do things one way, and Dom's kind of going, say, well, that's not how we do things here.
Yes.
Well, that's kind of that's a difficult place to start, right? Because trying to step into something that should be a unified front, and all of a sudden the way that you're doing things is perceived as the wrong way. I think that was a point of probably contention that was probably underlying a lot of what was going on. And we probably didn't really even recognize that until we were able to talk these things through. And it comes back to the whole point of having unity in a unified front is making sure that we've sat down, we know our roles such that they will help support something that we're both a part of, and not coming from two separate places trying to. The only place you're going to get with that is collisions, and we're just going to be butting heads. And I think that's where a lot of our peace and kind of unity has come from at home now, is just kind of knowing that, look, this isn't a family in which this is how things are done from one end, this is how things are done from another end, but just this is how things are done as our family.
The other thing too is I look at when Dom relinquished her her role as being, the head of the house, there's protection there when you give your, role to your husband. There's protection there. There's a covering there that wasn't there before, and there's peace there for you, and there's, just knowing that I don't have to do everything in the house. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we as women, if the roles aren't being filled or the shoes aren't being stepped into, we just do it because it has to be done.
Yeah.
So we just don't know how to do anything other than just step in that role and just take over it. But we really don't want that role. So it's
gonna get done.
Yes, it's gotta get done.
How it's gonna get done.
But it's a beautiful thing when you have a husband who is strong in his place and helping and doing what, and then we can cheer him on. Say yes, that's what we want. That's what men need. On top of it. So you guys learned to handle that differently since coaching.
I think for me, I think it's word choices. I think I don't think I'm there yet. But I think maybe approaching it in a calmer manner, and like I said, just coming with more of that openness, and taking any kind of accusatory tone out of it or words out of it, and just maybe trying to explain why I had said what I had said or what my thoughts behind it were, and then to ask what his opinion is or how he feels about it. Instead of just be like, didn't like this or I didn't like that, or instead of just saying, can we talk about that?
So as you guys know, communication is always a big issue for every couple. I mean, if we ask, when we do a poll, what's your biggest area of concern? It's always communication. So, and as true with you guys, communication was a big issue for you when you got here. So tell us a little bit about some of your communication obstacles and how you feel like you've implemented some new tools to do better at that.
I think one of the biggest things for me is a lot of our communication before this was very adversarial. I think both of us were in very difficult places, and so I think what we viewed a lot of each other's actions as were kind of in that role, and so communication in turn kind of followed along. So seemingly every little thing that was said or every little thing that was done, there was some sort of context or meaning behind it. So it could be the most benign conversation in the world, but it would be interpreted as such that that this was meant in negative light. And I, not to keep on coming back to this, but I think that as we've grown together and as we've kind of developed this unified front, I think communication, in all honesty, for me hasn't been as much of a active point of focus as much as I think something that's actually just kind of naturally followed along. So as we've strengthened our relationships and as we kind of see each other, quite frankly, in a different light, communication has improved because of that. What we're seeing as, things that were adversarial are now seen as things that are, things that are building us up. And, I think that as our relationship has improved, the way that we speak to each other has improved. The way that we treat each other has improved. And like I said, it hasn't been as much of an active thing as much as just something that's kind of passively followed along. But undoubtedly, it's been a big part of what's really made us happier.
Good.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think that for me, maybe it's been a little bit more of an active transition in the sense of how am I speaking to Brian? How am I initiating the conversation? Where am I coming from? And if I felt like I was coming from a space of agitation, resentment, anger, I would just stop. We didn't even start the conversation because there's only one way that's gonna go. It's
Right.
not good.
The unity and peace that you so desire to have in your home. And if so, you have to do what you have to do to get that.
Yeah.
You know. So if you go in with that mentality, your arguments look totally different.
Yeah.
You know, totally different. I know when we have our tiffs, even when I want to buck up, I know that, you know, where's it gonna land us? You know, I want to go to sleep at night and be in love with him. I want to hold his hand and sleep next to him. I don't want to hug the scene to go to sleep at night. I want to be able to be in unity with my husband. So when you go in with that kind of thought about it, it definitely makes you argue differently. You know, with some resolve. Because the end goal should always be to unify yourselves as husbands and wives and your family back together. So that's good.
Yeah. The thing I look at too is, you know, the word love seems like it's watered down in society right now. And people say, oh, I love that kind of food, or I love that. But when you fall in love with your wife or your husband, you are able to be patient with them. You're able to wait on them.
So if you guys had to encourage someone to do coaching, what would you say to them?
Now.
To our guests.
Get in touch. Get in touch now. Because if you're already thinking it, you need it. I would like to say, you know, you take your car for an oil change so many thousand of miles, and I think that every couple needs a check-in or a coaching session. Let's tweak here and get these things fixed. But if you're thinking that you need coaching, you're probably past that tweaking, like preventative maintenance phase.
Very good, yeah.
So that means you need it. And so talk to your spouse, mention it, start the conversation. If you're thinking about it, just do it, because you cannot go wrong with this.
That's good. How about you, Brian?
I mean, as I said earlier, I was the one who was hesitant to do this, right? And all I can say is I wish we would have done this earlier. It would have saved us months, if not years, of some pretty tough times.
Right.
And you know, the results that we've seen are going to last. And this is probably the happiest we've been in a long time.
Wow.
And all I can say is I wish we would have done it earlier. Yeah.
This is so it warms our heart to see that coaching is making a difference in people's lives. So we're honored and that they chose us, and we expect to see great things in store for them and for you too. So if you are thinking about coaching, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Go ahead and make that call or send that email, and we'll contact you ASAP.
It's never too late. It's not hopeless. God can always fix it. So don't hesitate.
So thank you again for joining us for this episode of Real Marriage, and we look forward to seeing you next week.